What's up, internet strangers? I'm Seth from Myriad Misadventures. Let's talk about Tokyo.
Dan's pretty excited.
Just a quick note, we really weren't there for that long, only like 3 or 4 days, and the city is absolutely massive. What that means is that there's a ton of it that we didn't see. We only saw a tiny bit of it, honestly, but I'm still going to talk about what we did see because some of it was really awesome. The first thing I want to touch on is capsule hotels. If you don't know what a capsule hotel is, it's sort of like a hotel, but instead of having your own room, there's one big room with lots of like sleeping pods in it. You leave your stuff in like a changing room, and then you just have your pod to sleep in. I thought going to a capsule hotel would be pretty cool. So since hotels are usually like check in sometime in the afternoon, leave sometime in the morning, I got 2 nights at the capsule hotel, Monday night and Tuesday night, so that I could get some sleep in like during the day in the middle. When I got there, I found out that the capsules are actually closed from like 10 to 1. As I understand, hostels are sort of aimed at business travelers and other people who just need somewhere to stay for one night. I still think they might be worth experiencing if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, but if you're going to go to one, make sure that it's going to fit your schedule. I don't know if all capsule hotels close in the afternoon like the one I went to, but I would not be surprised if they did. So, if you're going to go, just make sure that your hours are going to be okay. And it's almost definitely not something that you want to do for like your entire trip. Another important thing is money. It's probably one of the main things you read when you're looking into going to Japan, is that they are still a very cash-based society. And it's very true. There were a lot of places that only took cash. Even in a big modern city like Tokyo, which even knowing it going in, I found very surprising. So just make sure that you bring cash when you go and you have a way to get more cash while you're there. If you want to know how much cash to bring, you can check out my How Much Money Did I Spend in Tokyo video, which I will also link somewhere. Alright, getting around the city, I guess the country in general. But the big cities like Tokyo have very good subway systems, and the train system around the country is also very good, especially if you compare it to the systems in like the United States. The one thing though is some of those trains can get expensive. If you are traveling around the country, you can get, I believe it's called a JR pass, which as long as you're traveling enough will probably save you a lot of money traveling on some of the trains, but you don't need that if you're staying in Tokyo. But you are going to take the subway a lot. The way that the subway normally works is you get in, you pick the station that you're going to, you put in the money and you get a little paper ticket, and then when you get off the subway you like stick it back in. If you end up going to a different station than the one you originally said you went to, I'm pretty sure you have to like put your ticket into like a certain machine at that new station to like pay off any difference you have. It's kind of a pain if you take the subway a lot. So what you should do is get a subway card. We got Passmo cards. There were a couple of different cards for like different lines, I think. I can't tell you how they all work. When we were looking at the Passmo card, did all the lines that we wanted. We had no trouble using it. Everywhere that we went, took it no problem. And it's so much faster than buying the little paper ticket. You charge it up, and then you just like beep it as you're going into or out of the subway, and it takes money off based on how far you went. Food, of course, you're not going to go to Japan without eating. Everyone has their favorite Japanese food, and of course we were only there for a couple days, so we did not get to try nearly enough kinds of food, but we hit the most important ones, ramen and sushi. We ate a lot of ramen, like 3 or 4 times over our 3 or 4 day trip we had ramen. Now, Japan, of course, has so many different kinds of ramen, so if you know what you're looking for, you can probably try all sorts of different things that are similar in name, but quite different in taste. We also had sushi once as a snack near the end of the trip. It was conveyor belt sushi. Conveyor belt sushi is where the sushi's like on a belt that goes around the restaurant, and you just take what you want. I've never been to one in the States, but the one I go to here in China, the sushi is just on the belt. You can take it off and eat it. The one that we went to in Japan was a little different. There was just like a little card on the belt, and you would take the card off and the sushi chef would make it for you right then. So much fresher. I don't know what they do, it is incredible. Next level in Japan. You have to try it. Even if you're not a big fish guy, try it at least once just because it's really good. Another thing about restaurants is some of the restaurants have like a vending machine, I guess, that you order from. It's not really a vending machine, but there's like a big machine near the door with all the different things on it. And you put in your money and you pick what you want and you get like a little ticket, and then you take that ticket over to the chef Takes a little getting used to, but once you figure it out, it's not too bad. Some of them, they have a lot of Japanese on them, but there's usually at least a couple with some pictures, so even if you can't read all the Japanese, you'll have some things that you can choose from. We found those restaurants to be relatively inexpensive, so if you see that like big machine outside, you can probably get a pretty good meal for not too much money. If you've been to Japan, what is your favorite food that I missed? Leave me a comment down below so next time I can try it. Alright, next, Akihabara. If you're one of the like 2 people watching this video who don't know what Akihabara is, it's an area in Tokyo that is just full of manga and anime and comics and video games and figures, all of that stuff. Literally full of it. It's like if you took an anime convention and then spread it out over a whole area. I read a lot of comics, I play a lot of games, so does my friend, so this was totally a place that we had to hit up, and it was one of the first places we went. And it was awesome. I probably could have spent the whole trip there. It was just store full of DVDs, store full of figures, store full of retro video games, store full of used comics, another video game store. It was awesome. If you are interested in any of that, comics, games, cartoons, any of that stuff, you have to go to Akihabara. I think the biggest difference between it and what I've seen in the States is that there's a lot of older stuff. Maybe if you're in a big city like New York, you can find something similar, but I'm from a small town, and there's really only new stuff. If you want games, you go to GameStop, and there's only maybe one console a generation back. You want manga, you go to Barnes & Noble or order it off Amazon, I guess. But there's a very strong secondary market at Akihabara, so you can see all sorts of old stuff. One thing that surprised me was the number of CDs. I hadn't realized that anybody still listens to CDs. Turns out that a lot of people in Japan must still listen to CDs because there were entire stores of CDs. Even if you're not super interested in manga and anime and comics and games and all that stuff, I think that Akihabara is still worth a visit. Maybe don't linger there as long as we did, but I think it's still cool to go and sort of see that sort of, I don't know, culture, I guess. A word of warning, how do I put this? Some places have a lot of adult material, so if you are with children, be a little careful. We went into one store, we were looking at the CDs, we were looking at the DVDs, and then we went upstairs, and there was like an entire floor of pornography. And we found that repeated in many stores. There was often like a floor that was sort of dedicated to that. So if you're with kids, you might want to be careful when you're going upstairs. Go up first, make sure that it's okay for them. First floor always seemed to be okay. They usually put it farther up, so go up first, check it out, make sure it's okay, then bring your kids up. Another cool place we went was the Tokyo Imperial Palace Gardens. When we went, we were actually going to see the Imperial Palace, but it turns out you cannot go to the Imperial Palace. But you can visit the gardens around the palace. There are a couple of entrances. Some of them are like tour group entrances if you are with a group, but there's at least one entrance just for individual people. It is free, you don't need any money, but they check your bag when you go in, so make sure you're not walking around a foreign country with anything that you shouldn't have, I guess, but that's probably good advice always. But yeah, so admission is free, and you can just go in and wander around the gardens. There's a little bit of history there, some old buildings, a little bit of information about those buildings. There was a museum inside, I think, that had some replicas of some famous things from the past. Gardens are definitely worth visiting, but don't go expecting to see the castle like we did, or you'll be a little disappointed. Another place we went to briefly one day was called Kabukicho. It is a nightlife area, red light district that is part of Shinjuku. We weren't there for very long, we just sort of passed through while we were in the area. We were probably there too early for it to really be super busy since it's a nightlife area, but I feel like it's exactly what you sort of picture Tokyo as. There were all sorts of signs sticking out of buildings all over the place. I imagine at night it's lit up like a carnival? How does that analogy go? I honestly can't remember. But I imagine at night it's like super lit up with all the signs and stuff. Even during the day we could tell that it was probably crazy at night. But again, just like with Akihabara, it is a red light district area as well, so there's some stuff that's maybe not quite child appropriate, so as you're walking around, just keep in mind there might be some things that you don't want your kids to see if you are there with your kids. Hostess clubs, love hotels, things like that. If you really want to see it going, probably go a little later than we did. We were there like between 6 and 7 o'clock. If you really want to see it, it's a nightlife district, go later than we did. That's probably when it's most exciting. Then some other stuff like Tokyo Station and The Kabukiza, which is a big kabuki theater. I went to those at night, so there wasn't too much to see. The Kabukiza, unfortunately, was closed by the time I got there, but the outside was very impressive, even at night. If I go back to Tokyo, I'm definitely going to check it out during the day. Maybe I could see a kabuki show. The main thing that we did while we were there, other than visit some of those areas, was go to some temples and some shrines. Sort of like how if you're in Europe, you go to a lot of churches when you go to a new city. In Japan, it seems like you visit a lot of shrines and temples if you are interested in that sort of thing. If memory serves, shrines are Shinto and temples are Buddhist. I really hope I didn't mess that up. Of course, just like churches, if you are in Europe, the shrines and the temples are religious areas, so you need to be respectful when you're going. But most of them seem to welcome tourists, certainly, I think. So it's not like you should feel like you shouldn't go. Definitely go check them out. Some of them are very impressive. The architecture is much more traditional than you're going to see like in the middle of the city with all the skyscrapers. We went to a couple. I will list them on the side because I definitely can't remember all of them. The Sensoji Temple, Zojoji Temple, Meiji Jinu Shrine, Hanazono Jinja Shrine. Those are the big ones we hit. We might have wandered into a couple smaller ones as well, but those are the bigger ones that we specifically went to on purpose. The Meiji Jinu Shrine in Yogogi Park was particularly interesting because it was sort of set away from the city a bit. The other places we went to were sort of like right in the middle of the city, including the Sensoji Temple, which is pretty famous. The Meiji Jinu Shrine was in the middle of Yoyogi Park, so it was a lot less urban, I guess, than the rest of the stuff that we saw. It was nice to get out of the city a little bit and see some trees and stuff. I mean, we were still like right in the middle of the city, but they put it in the middle of a big park, so it feels less city-like. If you are looking for something to remember your trip by, I cannot recommend the Goshiwincho stamp books nearly enough. The Goshiwincho it's a book that you can buy at different temples and shrines, and then when you go to a temple or a shrine, you can make a donation, and the monks, I guess they're monks, I apologize if that is the wrong terminology, they do some calligraphy in the book and they give you some stamps, and they're unique to the different shrines or temples. I find when I go on trips, a lot of the things that are like souvenirs are kind of, I don't want to say touristy, I do a lot of touristy stuff, but they're just sort of things that they're selling to people because they're sort of high on their trip. But the Goshiwincho book is a much more, I feel like, meaningful reminder of your trip. It's probably the best reminder of a trip that I've been on that I've ever gotten before. And if I go back to Japan, I can bring it with me and get more stamps and calligraphy at shrines and temples in whatever new place that I am going to. So the trip was excellent. It was everything I hoped it would be. I cannot say enough good things about Japan. I just wish that we had had longer. I'd love to go back to Tokyo. There's so much of the city we didn't get to see. I'd love to visit some other cities. I'd like to go to Okinawa, learn some karate. So leave me a comment down below. Tell me what city I should visit next if I get the chance to go back. If you want to see any of the vlogs from this trip, I'll put links down below to all of them. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment. I will do my best to answer it. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share the video. Everyone says it helps. It really does. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Or you'll see me, I guess. I'm just going to see the camera. You know what I mean. At the beginning of the year, a friend of mine had messaged me and asked if I wanted to meet up in Tokyo during the summer, and I said, yes, absolutely. Suddenly thinking of those two kids that pretend to be a businessman from BoJack Horseman.